Hi, people. My name is Jeremiah Balogun, and today we are going to do something I never thought I would do an investigation. An investigation on UK rivers. Because UK rivers are awful, and you, the viewer, need to care. And I tell you why. Did you know that 40% of rivers in England have a good ecological status? Yeah, this is bad, but it's even worse compared to Northern Ireland, 31%. But it gets better. Did you know that Scotland have a 57.2% good ecological status and Wales 44? Like, this is our rivers we're talking about. Please, like, could someone get to 60%? During one incident on the 14th of February 2020, approximately 700 to 1,000 litres per second of raw sewage was released into the River Trent, my local river. Boohoo, why should I care? Well, I'll tell you. When our sewage system becomes too full, sewage is diverted directly into our waterways. Yeah, and not to be a bringer of worse news, but also harms ecosystems by introducing pollutants such as microplastics, heavy metals, and pharmaceuticals. But enough of my rambling. It's time for me to talk to an expert on rivers. Let me introduce to you Dr. Rachel Stubberton. She is a professor of freshwater ecology at Nottingham Trent University. She's also an ecological appraisal assistant for the Environment Agency. She has given me the privilege of interviewing her so I can learn more about the impacts of pollution in our rivers. How does pollution in the UK river system, such as the River Trent, impact water quality? And what impact would you say this has on the environment, like our drinking water and human health?
There's a lot in that question.
Yeah.
So pollution. What impact does it have on the environment? It's quite place specific.
Yeah.
So in some areas it is that organic matter pollution coming from wastewater treatment works that's reducing the oxygen levels.
Okay.
In other places it's the inorganic nutrients and pesticides coming off agricultural lands. And that can cause algal blooms in slow flowing waters.
Okay.
So that's a proliferation of algal biomass.
Ooh.
And when it dies, that's organic matter. And so guess
Wow.
what? It's
Wow.
decomposed
Okay.
by the microorganisms. They use up the oxygen. And so again, there can be declines in biodiversity. Remind me of the second part of your question.
I was gonna say, I said what impact does this have on the environment, drinking water,
Drinking water.
and human health?
Yeah. So in the UK,
Yeah.
we're not at the stage where there's a risk for us drinking the water out of our taps, but it means that water companies need to spend more money on treating the drinking water before they can supply it to customers.
Okay.
So there's those financial costs.
Yes.
In terms of human health, therefore, we're safe in our homes,
Yeah.
but and this is a particular issue in the River Trent, you hear about recreational water users. For example, I've got a colleague who rows on the Trent, and they know that if they fall in,
Yeah.
they might have a case of Trent belly.
Oh.
And
Trent
so
that's colic.
there's sickness and diarrhea as a result of coming into the contaminated water.
Wow.
And so that's a real shame
issue.
for us as humans who want to make the most of our water bodies and use them to benefit our physical and mental health, but the waters aren't able to do that if they're making us sick instead.
Wow. I have learned a lot from Dr. Stubberton. Our rivers are in serious trouble. Pollution is wrecking ecosystems, harming wildlife, and making people sick. This is not good. We need to do more. That's why today I'm speaking with Vanessa Sutman from the Trent Rivers Trust, a charity on the ground protecting and restoring rivers in the Trent catchment to see what we can do to fix our rivers. Okay, so from your work on the ground, what changes have you seen in the River's Trent's health, particularly regarding biodiversity and wildlife, due to the sewage pollution and other pollutants?
So we've seen a loss in species to the point where certain species have disappeared from the Trent. So, for example, the burbot and the sturgeon are no longer present. We do have a small salmon run, but it's it's nowhere near what it could be. So we're only really seeing a fraction of the life that we could see, and that is partially due to a decline in water quality, but also due to habitat fragmentation. So if you look, for example, here in the background there, we've got the Nottingham sluice gates, or the Colic sluice gates, and that's a major barrier to fish migration. Luckily, we've got like a fish pass there now which can mitigate some of it, but yeah, overall it's a loss of habitat and access to habitat, but also the kind of water quality that would then make it difficult for fish to survive.
Okay, so how is the Trent Rivers using catchment-based approach and nature-based solutions to improve river health, reduce pollution, enhance sustainability, and address flood risks, while still promoting long-term and environmental resilience?
So the idea with a catchment-based approach and nature-based solutions is to link the landscape to the river. So to look at land use and look at ways in which we can bring nature back into that different land use. So and then that's possible in a rural setting, so where we would be looking at sort of building more ponds or connecting the river back to the floodplain, building more hedgerows, and different ways of bringing back nature to support spongier landscapes, and to bring that into urban cities, so where we bring things like sustainable drainage systems that essentially just create sponges within the city that would mean that the water isn't just flushed off the concrete into the river, but is kind of retained and allows pollutants to settle out before the water comes back into the river. So the idea is to create sponges, to create wetter, better landscapes.
Okay. What actions can individuals take in their daily lives to reduce pollution in the River Trent and these other rivers?
It's very challenging, I think, for an individual to get involved, but there are definitely ways in which you can get involved. So the most useful thing you can do is to raise your voice and recognise that you do have a voice, and that if you approach your MP and you say to them, look, I'm really concerned about water quality in my area, I'm really impacted by this, or I really want to see more wildlife in my area, that you actually give them ammunition to bring into Parliament, where they can raise their voice and say, look, my constituents are really concerned about this issue. So to kind of recognise your own agency in this, I think, would be the first and most important thing. And then there are sort of smaller actions where you recognise, where, the idea of, okay, whatever I do on land is going to have an impact on the river. One of the main things is only pee, paper, poo down the toilet. So things like wet wipes, they can clog up the system, and that means that the water that you're flushing down the toilet is actually not going to reach the sewage treatment work, and then is instead flushed through something that we call combined sewer overflows into the river. So really just making sure that whenever you flush the toilet, you just pee, paper, poo.
No wipes.
No wipes. So that's an issue. And also things like cooking oils, don't put them down the drain. They get cold, they clog up the system. So anything that kind of can clog up the sewage system is something that you can do in a very relatively easy way. It's a relatively easy way for you to reduce your impact on river pollution. And then there's the simple things around don't litter, don't drop your litter. It's going to make its way into the ocean, it's going to make its way into the river, one way or another. So we're just stood here, we can see loads of rappers and wildlife sort of feeding where the rappers are. So it's solutions around don't litter, and
Wow, I've learned so much today from Professor Stubbington and Vanessa. Do not put oil down the drain. Do not put wipes in the toilet. And you have a voice, so please use it.